Hello everyone, I am Priyanka Wilson and welcome to GS Score series of decoding the UPSC syllabus with macro topic detailing. Environment is the one subject in civil services examination from which number of questions are increasing every year and hence it becomes an important subject to master. But if we see its syllabus, not much it's elaborated. So to give you a macro perspective on the environment syllabus, Rajvardhan sir will decode it for you so that no topic remain untouched. So guys, stay tuned for the next other videos in this series, and also if you like this video, so please like, share and subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for regular updates. Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome to GS Core. This is Syllabus Explained series and today we'll be discussing syllabus of Environment and Ecology. Environment and Ecology is a subject on which questions are asked in both prelims and mains examination. But if we go through previous year questions, we'll find that its weightage is more in prelims examination. So in this session, we'll be discussing syllabus of Environment and Ecology given by UPSC for both prelims and mains examination. So let us start with the session. First of all, as you can see, this slide mentions about the prelim syllabus given by UPSC, and as per that syllabus, general issues on environmental ecology, biodiversity, climate change that do not require subject specialization. So this is the syllabus that UPSC has given for prelims examination. So what we can say, these are the topics on which questions will be asked. First, environmental ecology. Second, biodiversity. And third, climate change. These are the three topics that are mentioned in the prelims syllabus. Now, if we discuss mains syllabus, then in mains, it has been mentioned conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, and final topic is environmental impact assessment, right? So if we see both these syllabus of prelims and mains, then we'll find that the topics that are mentioned are too open-ended, right? For example, environmental ecology, what exactly we are supposed to study under environmental ecology. Similarly, biodiversity, quite an open-ended term. What we are supposed to study under biodiversity. Then climate change. And in mains, again, the terms are like conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, and environmental impact assessment. So all these terms are quite open-ended terms, and that's why it is very important to understand what are the subtopics that we should study under these broader headings given by UPSC. And in this session, we'll be discussing about those topics only, right? So what exactly are the topics we should study under these broader headings given by UPSC in its syllabus, right? One more important aspect for environment and ecology is that though they have mentioned about the syllabus for prelims and mains separately, where let's say in prelims these are the topics and in mains these are the topics. But we will find that often questions are asked from those topics. Let's say in prelims questions are asked from pollution. Questions are asked from pollution, but pollution is not mentioned in the prelim syllabus, right? Similarly, though in the main syllabus they have not mentioned about climate change, but still questions have been asked on climate change. So what does that mean? It means that this subject will have to study in an integrated manner. It would be very difficult for us to study it for prelims or for mains we should study it in an integrated manner where we are doing the study of prelims and mains simultaneously, right? And that's why in this session we'll be discussing about the 5 topics on which questions can be asked and what are the subtopics that we should study for those topics mentioned by UPSC, right? So let us start with the first topic, and that is environmental ecology. Environmental ecology, right? So environmental ecology, this is the first topic mentioned in the prelims syllabus. So what exactly we will have to study under environmental ecology? So as name suggests, environmental ecology, here we are supposed to study the basics of ecology, as well as the basics of environment, right? For example, what are the components of environment? Biotic components, abiotic components, those components, right? How these components are interrelated to each other, how do they influence the life of living organisms. So that is what we are supposed to study in the environmental ecology under basics of environment. Secondly, we have to study various levels of ecological organization, right? Ecology is a scientific study. It is a scientific study of home of living organisms, and home of living organisms means environment, right? So ecology is a scientific study of environment, and this scientific study of the environment can be carried out at various levels. Those levels are called as levels of ecological organization. These levels may be like individual. Secondly, population. Third, community. Fourth, ecosystem. Next, biome, and then biosphere, right? So these 6 levels of ecological organization are important aspect of environmental ecology topic mentioned by UPSC, right? So under this, these 2 are the most important levels, and that's why we'll be discussing those levels separately. For example, you can see here ecosystem, its structure and functions, right? So ecosystem has a specific structure which consists of both biotic as well as abiotic components, right? And when we talk about biotic components, we are primarily focusing upon producers, consumers, and decomposers. And for abiotic components, those abiotic components may be inorganic components, organic components, and physical components of the environment, right? So those are the components which make up a structure of an ecosystem, right? Then there are various functions that are carried out in the ecosystem. What are those functions? Those functions are like, first, energy flow through trophic level. We know that in the environment there is a specific path followed by energy from producers to consumers, and from these two to decomposers. So that is an important aspect, that is an important function in the ecosystem, and questions have been asked by UPSC on these topics as well. Secondly, second function is biogeochemical cycles, which are also called as nutrient cycles. Biogeochemical cycles or nutrient cycles. For example, in 2022's prelims examination, there was a question on nitrogen fixation. So nitrogen fixation is an important step under nitrogen cycle, which is a nutrient cycle, right? So questions have been asked by UPSC from these biogeochemical cycles as well, right? So such functions we have to study under ecosystem. Then comes the next level, and that is biomes, right? So when we study biomes, we have to study biomes of world as well as biomes of India. For example, if we talk about biomes of world, then we have different types of biomes like tundra biome, desert biome, forest biome, then grassland biome, Mediterranean biome, savanna biome. All these important types of biomes are the focus of UPSC's prelims examination, right? For example, in 2021 prelims exam, they have asked a question on biome, right? Then Indian biomes are primarily forest biome, grassland biome, and desert biome, right? So again, on this question has been asked by UPSC in the mains examination. How biodiversity vary in India? There we can use this particular concept of biomes to talk about how biodiversity goes on changing in India, right? So these are the topics that are there in the environmental ecology topic mentioned by the UPSC. Now let us discuss few questions from environmental ecology. So in 2019 there was a question on environmental ecology, and the question was, define the concept of carrying capacity of an ecosystem as relevant to an environment. Explain how understanding this concept is vital while planning for sustainable development of a region, right? So, and carrying capacity, if we understand this concept of carrying capacity, how we can use this concept of carrying capacity to carry out sustainable planning of a region. That was the focus of the question, right? So that was mains question asked by UPSC in 2019. Then in prelims, there are many questions that have been asked from environmental ecology topic. For example, in 2022's prelims examination, there was a question, which of the following are nitrogen fixing plants, right? So they have given a few statements where they have mentioned different plants, and we are supposed to find out which are the plants that play important role in nitrogen fixation. So answer for this question is alfalfa, chickpea and clover, right? That means A is the correct answer for this question, right? So this was the question from nitrogen cycle. And nitrogen cycle we have referred to while talking about nutrient cycles, right? Nutrient cycles are important function under ecosystem, right? So that is the question from environmental ecology. One more question from environmental ecology, and the question is, again, this question is from 2022's prelims examination. If rainforest and tropical forest are the lungs of the earth, then surely wetlands function as its kidneys. Which one of the following functions of wetlands best reflects the above statement, right? So they are able to absorb heavy metals and excess nutrients, and that's why they are called as, wetlands are called as kidney of the nature, right? So this was the question of 2022, right? So that is about the environmental ecology, very important chapter under environment and ecology, because this chapter can be considered as a foundation to understand this particular subject, right? Next, so after environmental ecology, UPSC has mentioned about biodiversity in their prelims syllabus. And what we have done, biodiversity and this part of conservation, which they have mentioned in the mains syllabus. We can study these two aspects simultaneously, or we can study these two aspects together. So that's why second chapter is biodiversity and conservation. So under biodiversity and conservation, firstly we'll be understanding few basic concepts related to biodiversity. What do we mean by biodiversity? What are the different levels of biodiversity? For example, genetic diversity, then species diversity, and then ecosystem diversity. These are the three levels of biodiversity, right? Then importance of biodiversity. Why biodiversity is important? If we are using various kinds of resources, obviously biodiversity is the location from which these resources are coming, right? And that is the importance of biodiversity, and that's why it is important for us to ensure that the resources that we are using, which are coming from biodiversity, should be used in a sustainable manner, so that these resources are not exploited. But that is not happening these days, because we are not using resources of biodiversity in a sustainable manner, and there is exploitation of these resources. And due to this exploitation of resources, there are a number of threats posed to biodiversity, right? So various threats are posed to biodiversity. They are like climate change and global warming, pollution, habitat loss and habitat fragmentation, introduction of invasive alien species. All these are the threats because of which biodiversity is getting degraded, and hence there is a need of conservation of biodiversity. Where we will try to restore the pristine nature of biodiversity. And for this conservation of biodiversity, we can follow two approaches. First is in situ approach, and second is ex situ approach, right? So these approaches will be studying under biodiversity and conservation. Then efforts for biodiversity conservation. As human beings are the factor because of which biodiversity has been threatened, it is our responsibility to make sure that the threats are reduced and biodiversity is conserved. And that's why there are many efforts that have been carried out both at international level as well as at the level of India, through which biodiversity is conserved. For example, if we consider some international efforts, then UNCBD, United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, is the most important convention for the conservation of biodiversity. Then other conventions are also there, like Ramsar Convention, then CMS, Convention on Migratory Species, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. So many conventions are there which are helping us to conserve biodiversity, right? So apart from these international conventions, even India has taken few steps to conserve biodiversity. For example, creation of protected areas. Creation of protected areas is an important step taken by government of India, or we can say the authorities in India, right? So protected areas like wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, community reserves, conservation reserves, these are the important steps taken for the conservation of biodiversity in India. Apart from creation of protected areas, we have also started some species-centric initiatives. For example, Project Tiger, Project Elephant, Project Snow Leopard, then there is action plan for the conservation of vultures. So all these important steps have been taken to make sure that species which have got threatened because of human action are restored, right? So all these are the efforts that we will be studying under biodiversity and conservation. Now let us discuss few questions asked by UPSC from biodiversity and conservation. Firstly, mains questions. So in 2018, there was a question asked by UPSC, and that is, what is a wetland? Explain the Ramsar concept of wise use in the context of wetland conservation. Cite two examples of Ramsar sites from India. Right? So a very straightforward question asked by UPSC in 2018 on wetlands, then wise use of wetlands under Ramsar Convention, and also the examples of Ramsar sites in India. Second question is from 2018 again. How does biodiversity vary in India? How is the Biological Diversity Act 2002 helpful in the conservation of flora and fauna? Right? So how does biodiversity vary in India? We can take the help of different types of biomes that are there in India. What are the different types of plants and animal species in those biomes? We can write as first part. And in the second part, we are supposed to discuss how Biological Diversity Act 2002 is helpful in the conservation of flora and fauna. Right? So this is the act which ensures that the Convention on Biological Diversity, that is CBD, and its goals are implemented in India. And through that implementation, Biological Diversity Act 2002 is trying to conserve flora and fauna in India. Right? So that is these are the questions from biodiversity and conservation. Next, now let us discuss few questions from prelims examination asked on this particular topic. So these were the questions, or this was the question asked in 2022's prelims examination. So on one hand, we have wetlands or lakes, and on other, their location, and we are supposed to find out which of these pairs are correctly matched. So Hokera, it is in Jammu and Kashmir, and that's why first pair is incorrect. Renuka wetland is in Himachal Pradesh. Rudrasagar is in Tripura. Sashtamkota is in Kerala. So again, this is incorrect. So only two pairs are correctly matched, and that's why answer is B. Right? So question, this is the latest question asked by UPSC on wetlands, and we know that wetlands are important part of the biodiversity, ecosystem diversity. Next question is from 2021's exam. Which of the following protected areas are located in Kaveri Basin? Right? So Nagar Hole, Papikunda National Park, Satyamangalam Tiger Reserve, Wayanad. So out of this, Nagar Hole, Satyamangalam and Wayanad are located in the Kaveri Basin. Right? So these questions, these type of questions have been asked by UPSC, where they have asked about protected areas in India. They have asked about different species and protected areas in which those species can be found. Such type of questions have been asked by UPSC, and also UPSC has asked questions related to the conventions for the conservation of biodiversity, be it Ramsar Convention, CBD, CITES, CMS. On those conventions, UPSC has already asked questions. Right? So that is about biodiversity and conservation. Next, third chapter that we'll be discussing under Environment and Ecology is climate change. So again, it is exclusively mentioned in the prelims syllabus. So what exactly we are going to study under climate change? Firstly, we'll cover a few basics, where we'll discuss about the meaning of climate change, what exactly are the causes of climate change, right? So we know that causes of climate change can be divided into two: natural causes and anthropogenic causes. Anthropogenic causes. Natural causes and anthropogenic causes. And today, when we talk about climate change, it is anthropogenic causes which are the prime factors for today's climate change, right? Then what is greenhouse effect? What are different greenhouse gases? what are their sources, what is their global warming potential, right? What is their lifespan? All these factors we'll talk about under greenhouse gases. Then the related issue of ozone layer depletion is also important. Ozone layer depletion, right? Ozone layer depletion is the result of ozone depleting substances. So we'll be discussing how exactly ozone layer depletes, what is the contribution of ozone depleting substances, why there is more ozone depletion in the Antarctic region than Arctic region. That those factors we'll be discussing. Then impact of climate change on various aspects of our life, be it on agriculture, water resources, health, then the inequality, different types of ecosystems, how different types of ecosystems are getting affected because of climate change, how biodiversity is getting affected by climate change. All those factors we'll be discussing under impacts of climate change. Then mitigation of climate change. Impacts of climate change are quite severe, and that's why there is a need to ensure that mitigation of climate change is carried out, right? Where our focus is to reduce the impacts of climate change, to reduce the intensity of the impacts of climate change, right? And that can be done by following various approaches, especially at the international level. We are focusing on reduction in the emission of greenhouse gases, and for that, one very important convention is there, and that convention is known as UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, right? So under UNFCCC, there are two important actions till now that have been taken, for example, Kyoto Protocol and Paris Climate Deal. So those factors we'll be discussing under mitigation of climate change. Also, for mitigation of climate change in India, we have taken number of steps. For example, in 2008, National Action Plan on Climate Change was started. Then thereafter, many different steps have been taken, like INDCs. India has come up with its own intended nationally determined contributions. Then India has come up with various steps to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases and to promote the use of renewable energy, right? So all those steps will help us in the mitigation of climate change. Those steps we'll be discussing in this particular subtopic. And finally, we'll discuss about IPCC, its different reports. For example, the latest report is 6th assessment report. Its special reports also will be discussing under climate change, right? So that is what we'll be discussing under climate change. Now let us discuss few questions from climate change topic. So though this climate change topic is mentioned in the prelim syllabus, questions have been asked in mains exam as well. For example, describe the major outcomes of the 26th session of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. What are the commitments made by India in this conference? So this was the question asked in 2021's mains examination, right? So during that particular time, COP26 was held at Glasgow, and it was the topic under current affairs, and that's why question was asked. Next, question number 2. Climate change is a global problem. How will India be affected by climate change? How will Himalayan and coastal states of India will be affected by climate change? So this was asked in 2017, right? So these kind of questions have been asked by UPSC in the mains examination from climate change topic. Now let us discuss few prelims question from climate change. Right, so first question, this was the question asked in 2022's prelims examination. Climate action tracker, which monitors the emission reduction pledges of different countries, is a. So it is a database created by coalition of various research organizations. So these type of questions have been asked by UPSC. One more question. related to climate change. Question is, in the context of which of the following do some scientists suggest the use of cirrus cloud thinning technique and the injection of sulfate aerosol into the stratosphere, right? So it has been recommended by various scientists for reducing the global warming, right? So these are the some questions asked by UPSC from climate change. Next topic is environmental pollution and degradation. Environmental pollution and degradation. So environmental pollution, it is mentioned in the mains. So this topic is mentioned in the mains syllabus, but still questions have been asked in prelims as well. So what we are going to discuss under environmental pollution and degradation? Firstly, obviously, we'll talk about pollution, basics of pollution. What do we mean by pollution? What are different types of pollutants? What are different types of pollutions? What are their causes? What are their impacts? What steps have been taken by the government to reduce those kind of pollutions? For example, air pollution. What are the sources of air pollution, both natural as well as anthropogenic? What are different air pollutants? What are their sources? What are their impacts? And then what action government has taken to reduce air pollution? All the actions, for example, the enactment of Air Act 1981 is the most important action taken by the government for the reduction of air pollution. And if we talk about recent actions, then NCAP, National Clean Air Program, then the establishment of commission to improve the quality of air in NCR region. That is also an important step taken by the government. Then promotion of cleaner sources of energy, then shift towards hydrogen as a fuel. So all these steps have been taken by the government to reduce air pollution. All those steps will be discussing under solutions for air pollution. And similar approach we will follow for other types of pollutions like water pollution, solid waste pollution, e-waste pollution, plastic pollution. This approach, that means their causes, their impacts and solutions, this approach will follow for the discussion of those pollutions as well. Then next topic is land degradation, right? Land degradation, what are the causes of land degradation? Then what are the impacts of land degradation? And finally, solutions through which we can address the problem of land degradation. So that is how we'll be discussing about environmental pollution and degradation. Now let us discuss few questions from this particular topic. So firstly, mains questions from environmental pollution and degradation. So first question is asked in 2021's mains examination. Describe the key points of the revised global air quality guidelines recently released by WHO. How are these different from its last update in 2005? What changes in India's National Clean Air Program are required to achieve these revised standards? Right. So the question is on upgradation given by the WHO in its air quality guidelines. So these guidelines were given in 2021, and it was an upgradation over the guidelines given in 2005, and that's why UPSC asked this question. And also they have linked this upgradation in the air quality guidelines with the need to carry out changes in National Clean Air Program, right? So that was the question asked in 2021's mains examination. Next question was from 2018's mains exam, and that was, what are the impediments in disposing of the huge quantities of discarded solid waste which are continuously being generated? How do we remove safely the toxic waste that have been accumulating in our habitable environment, right? So we know that solid waste management is a problem in India. So how we can handle this particular problem, especially in Indian cities? And then in the second part, how do we remove safely the toxic material, the toxic waste that have been accumulating in the habitable environment, right? So that was the question asked by UPSC in 2018's mains exam. Next. Now questions have been asked in prelims exam as well. For example, the question of 2022 prelims exam. Question is, among the following crops, which one is the most important anthropogenic source of methane and nitrous oxide? Right. So we know that rice or paddy cultivation, where we are using various kinds of fertilizers as well. So as a result of paddy cultivation, there is release of methane, and through the use of fertilizers, there is release of nitrous oxide, right? So that was the question asked in 2022's prelims exam. One more question was there from pollution topic, and that is related to acid rain. So consider the following: carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, ozone, sulfur dioxide. Excess of which of the above is in the environment are causes of acid rain, right? So very simple question. Generally UPSC do not ask these simple questions from environmental pollution, but this question and the previous question asked in 2022's prelims exam was comparatively easier. So it is nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide. That means 2 and 4 B, right? So that is about the questions asked by UPSC from environmental pollution and degradation. Next topic that is mentioned in the mains syllabus is environmental impact assessment, popularly known as EIA, environmental impact assessment, or EIA. So under this particular topic, firstly we'll try to understand the concept of EIA. What exactly do we mean by EIA, right? Then we'll be discussing why it is important to carry out environmental impact assessment, right? So environmental impact assessment is carried out before the initiation of any project. So if we are carrying out EIA before the initiation of project, we can get idea about the probable impacts of that project on the environment, and that is the importance of environmental impact assessment. Then the steps followed to carry out environmental impact assessment. So there are a number of steps followed to carry out environmental impact assessment. And finally, EIA notifications published in India. So EIA notifications are given in India under Environment Protection Act 1986. So under that act, as of now, notification of 2006 is followed. But in 2020, government came up with draft notification as well, but it has not been approved as of now. Fine. So these are the topics that we'll be discussing under environmental impact assessment. Now let us discuss questions as well. So till now, one very important question was asked by UPSC on environmental impact assessment, and that is, how does the draft environment impact assessment EIA notification 2020 differ from the existing EIA notification of 2006, right? So this topic was in news during 2020, and that's why UPSC asked question on that draft EIA notification published by Government of India, right? So that was the question on EIA. And as EIA is primarily a topic of mains, they have not asked question on EIA in the prelims exam, right? So that is about the different topics that we are supposed to study under environment and ecology as a subject. So to summarize, there are total 5 topics that we will be discussing under environment and ecology. First is environmental ecology, where basics related to ecology will be discussed. Second, biodiversity and conservation, where our focus will be on the understanding of biodiversity of India, different steps taken for the conservation of biodiversity at global level as well as at Indian level. Then the third chapter will be climate change, where again we'll understand the basics related to climate change, the impact of climate change, and what are the steps taken for the mitigation of climate change. Then the fourth chapter will be environmental pollution and land degradation, where again we'll be discussing different types of pollutions, what are their sources, what are their impacts, and how we can stop those pollutions. And finally, fifth topic will be environmental impact assessment. Right? So these are the 5 topics that we are supposed to study under environment and ecology. And while discussing these topics, we have also focused upon the subtopics that we are supposed to study under these topics, as well as the questions that UPSC has asked in the previous years. So that is about this video. Thank you.